I've tested and set up the 5 most popular no-code MCP servers so that you don't need to spend time figuring out how to set them up. MCP, short for Model Context Protocol, is a way for AI models to connect directly to your spreadsheets, databases, and apps and take real actions without you needing to copy-paste information. With an MCP server, your AI can update your CRM, analyze business data, or send out messages all from a simple conversation. In recent times, Zapier, Make, N8N, Relevance, Pipedream have all added MCP servers to their platforms, and this is super logical since MCP is all around AI connecting to tools, and all of these no-code platforms are already integrated with the tools that we use each and every day. In this video, I'll show you the exact step-by-step process to set up an MCP server on each platform so that you can connect your AI to hundreds of tools in a matter of minutes and not days. For each platform, I won't just cover the technical setup, I'll also touch on the different pricing options that they have, as well as some of the best use cases for each platform. But before we jump into the setup, let me give you a quick demo of exactly what MCP can do. Probably the best way for me to showcase the power of MCP is to start by actually showing you a chat I had with Claude when I didn't have any MCP tools enabled. So here I asked Claude the question, based on the current emails that we're sending out to our users, how would you assess our tone and style of our emails? And Claude says, I'd be happy to analyze the tone and style of your emails, but I don't currently have access to them. To provide a meaningful assessment, I would need to see examples of the emails you're sending. Makes a ton of sense. And this is here where we typically go, find some emails, copy paste them, or add them as PDFs. But now let's check out a new chat with some MCP tools enabled. So I'm just going to copy this prompt and open up a new chat with Claude. And this time in the search and tools section, so I actually have a MCP server set up with several tools around a specific Google Sheet. And the Google Sheet that we have is our email overview Google Sheet, where we track the different emails that we're sending. Here's an example. And I basically have 3 actions. I can get all the emails in this sheet. I can add new emails to it, and I can also update existing emails. And I'm going to enable all the tools in this MCP server. And let me send that exact same prompt over to Claude. And now we already got quite a different response. So again, happy to help analyze the current tone. And rather than saying, can you please share? Now Claude's realized that it should use the get emails from the email overview Google Sheet MCP. And I'm going to say allow always. So it always can use that tool. And now thanks to that tool, we can even see here under the hood, this is all the data from that Google Sheet. Probably is quite hard for a human to understand, but actually AI can really understand this very simply, that this is data coming from a Google Sheet with different columns for like the email subject and the body. And then Claude's run its analysis that we have a friendly and approachable style, personal and human, clear and concise. So now with that in mind, I can actually use my AI assistant to help me create some more emails. So I'm going to ask it, I want to work on a new email that we want to send to students when they complete one of our courses. Congratulate them on finishing the course and share where they can find their certificate, and also encourage them to share their new certification on LinkedIn. And I'll send this prompt off. And now Claude has immediately actually asked for, it wants to immediately add a new email to my overview sheet. I will actually decline this one because I actually first want to see it in Claude. That is one thing about MCP. When you give the AI access to tool, it is always quite keen to actually use them. But now that I've told it, hey, you can't use that tool yet, actually just shared first the complete draft in here. So hi, first name, amazing work. You've completed the course name course. So it's already detected from that Google Sheet the way we create these little placeholder tags and also how we format our buttons. We'd love to see you showcase your new skills on LinkedIn. Here's how download the certificate, create a new LinkedIn post, tag at 9x Learning. So let's say if I'm happy with this, I can say, that's great. Can you add it into our email plan? And now Claude's realized that it can finally use the add new email. I can say allow once. And if we head over to our Google Sheet, we should see this one coming in a second. And here we see that 5th email has just been added in, the course completion email. You see it's following the structure absolutely perfect, that for every email, we sort of have an internal name, we have a subject, the body of the email and a short description. And right now it is in the idea status. Now, the reason I'm using Claude for this demonstration is that currently it is the only LLM chat that supports MCP. However, recently both the teams at OpenAI and at Google have committed to adopting this technology, for both ChatGPT and Gemini. Now, there's actually two methods of connecting an MCP server to Claude. First of all, using the web app and the new Claude integrations feature. And secondly, using the Claude desktop app and running this locally. So the first method of connecting an MCP server to Claude is using the Claude integrations feature. To do that, you just want to head to claude.ai in the web app, and at the bottom left, go on to your settings. Now, in order to have access to the Claude integrations feature, you do need to be on the team plan or above and also have admin access to that team. If you're not on the team plan and you're just on the free plan, don't worry, you can use the local method that I will show you in a second. But for the Claude integrations feature, we're just going to go to settings. And then on the bottom here, we're just going to click on integrations. And now we need to toggle over to organization integrations. And this is where we'll see the different MCPs. So Claude have already pre-built some, for instance, their integrations with some of the Google Suite, with GitHub, but here we can simply add a custom integration. And here I can simply now give my MCP server a name and also paste in the MCP server URL that will be provided by the tools. So here's an example that I have for a task management MCP and the integration URL coming from N8N. I'm simply just going to hit add, and we can see now this one is enabled. If we now go and start a new chat and have a look here in the search and tools, we'll see my task management MCP with the little number 3, and that's because it has access to 3 tools. So here I'm able to get all the tasks from my task management system and also create new tasks and update existing tasks. Now, if you happen to be just on the Claude free plan and you don't have access to the integrations feature on the web app, don't worry. You can also connect to MCPs using the Claude desktop app and running this locally. So to do that, we want to have our Claude desktop app open, and then we want to open up the settings. And when you open up the settings, a little new window will pop up here. And if we click on developer, there is the button here, edit config. And when you click on that one, what it's going to do is it's going to take you to this Claude desktop config file, which is a .json. So maybe this is already scaring off some of you. Don't worry, it's not very complicated. I can walk you through this step by step. All you need to do is open up this JSON file in any text editor. So I'm just going to select Visual Studio Code. And what we have here is a file where we basically just need to paste in some information from the MCP server. And all of the tools are going to provide you with the exact JSON that you need to post in here. And I'm going to show you some examples along the way. We just simply need to paste in the JSON details of an MCP server. Here's an example again from N8N, and I've just named this the tasks MCP server. So what I can do now, I can save this file, make sure I've saved it, and then I can close it. And I can also close the folder and close the settings. Now, back in my Claude app, you'll notice this MCP does not show up yet. And that's because we actually need to reboot the Claude app. So I'm actually going to quit Claude. And then when that is quit, I need to simply launch it again, because that way it can actually read this config file that was just set up. So now with Claude opened again, I'll take a look at the search and tools. And now we see that tasks MCP connected, where I can get tasks, update, and create new tasks. Now, one extra caveat here, in order to make this work, you do need to have Node installed, specifically NPX. So if you just head to nodejs.org, and I will leave a link in the description below, if you do want to connect your MCP server using the Claude desktop app, you will need to download Node and have it running on your machine. But as I said, I'll leave the link. It's very easy. You simply just need to download and install it. To set up an MCP server in N8N, you just want to go ahead and create a new workflow. And then in that workflow, we're going to add a first step and simply search for MCP server. And you'll see here MCP server trigger. So that's the one we're going to use. And whenever you click this, what's going to be immediately provided to you is this MCP server URL. And we have a test URL and a production URL. And you can feel free to change the path as you see fit. So imagine here, I want to create an MCP server that's going to pull in and manage my tasks. I might call this one the path task minus MGMT, task management, and you see that that updates both the production and the test URL. But before we go and actually either set this up as a Claude integration or using the Claude desktop app, we shouldn't stop here, because for an MCP server to be powerful, we need it to connect it to tools. So you can actually click out now of this MCP server trigger, and you'll see now your tools, and there's a little plus button. So when we click this one, this is the way that we can add tools that our MCP server can call. And we can basically choose from the thousands of different apps that N8N support. For instance, Google Sheet, Google Drive, Airtable, we see here Coda, so plenty of tools. And you can also actually call an entire N8N workflow tool. So you could set up, maybe with more in-depth tools that you need to set up, you could actually create an N8N workflow that you provide to the MCP server as a tool. In our case, we have our task management system on Airtable. So I'm just going to select Airtable from the list here. And then we can select what actions do we want to take. And the way you can basically think about it, if you want your MCP server to be able to get the tasks that you currently have in your task management system, if you want them to update tasks, if you want them to create tasks, maybe even delete tasks, you would be setting up different tools for each of those use cases. So one that I always recommend is actually just like a getting whatever object you're working with. So here I'm going to basically say that I want to get records, and I'm going to get. I'm not going to create or update right now, or I'm not going to search. So actually get retrieves a single record. In my case, what I'm going to select is search, because I want to return more than one. And now I can simply select my base, and that is my task management demo. So I've already actually connected Airtable. You see, you just need to connect whatever tool you're using the N8N connection. And then I can select my table, which is tasks. Now, from this task table, I want to return all objects. And a very useful step, see at the moment, this tool is just called Airtable. If I click out of this, the only thing here is it's called Airtable and it says search record. What we need to do is come up with names that will make it easy for the LLM to understand what this tool is doing. So I'm going to click back into this one and rename this one to get all tasks. So I've just jumped ahead. I've set up 2 more tools for my MCP server. I now also, to that same Airtable base, I have a create new task tool and also an update task. And one thing I want to show you here that's quite powerful with these MCP servers is, for instance, when I'm creating a new task, I'm again going to my tasks table in Airtable. But for instance, for the task name and the due date and the project name, I've got it set to defined automatically by the model. And this is the power of MCPs, is we'll be interacting with Claude. Maybe we ask Claude to come up with a list of tasks to add to our task management base. It will know the names. We'll see them there written in front of us. And when Claude calls this tool, it will know exactly what information, for instance, to put in here in the task name, in the due date. I've set all the statuses to do whenever it's creating a new task. But if we have a look at updating a task, what we'll see is that we've got an ID here that it needs to actually match, because it will typically pull in tasks and then we can create them. Again, we have the task name and project name defined by the model. Now, with the due date and status, this is still being defined by the model. You see here, there's this little parameter from AI. However, I'm able to give it some more specific instructions. So I was having some issues with the way that Claude was basically sending the dates to Airtable. So here, using this from AI formula from N8N, I can basically say you're going to fill the due date column and give some instructions about exactly what format the date should be in. And same for the status. I've basically said you're updating the status, and given, because the status is a single select, I need to tell it that it's either going to be to do, in progress, or done. So now that we have our tools set up, and you can add as many tools to your MCP server as possible. Imagine even if you have another Airtable base that aren't managing tasks, but maybe they're managing your content calendar. What I would always recommend is create a tool for every specific action. So rather than one tool that's get records from Airtable and then having the AI decide which table it should pull from, it's far better to just add it as a separate tool, have one called to get tasks and another one have get content ideas or get content calendar, for instance. So now that our MCP server is set up, we can move on to the next step of connecting this MCP to Claude, as I showed before. So if you're using the integrations, you simply just need to copy this URL. What I would recommend is if you are using the test URL and you copy this over to Claude, this test URL only works in N8N whenever you click test step here, or within the workflow. You can basically, if I stop this test here, I can say test workflow, and now it's waiting for a trigger event. And this, you will need to make sure that tests are running every time you basically to connect Claude to this N8N MCP server, and sometimes it can cause issues. So what I've found is a much smoother experience is just connecting the production URL once you've got your tools set up. Now, if you want to use the Claude desktop app, if we head over to the documentation, and I will leave a link to this one in the description below, we can see here there's the section integrating with Claude desktop app. And here you will find the exact JSON that you need to use, that you need to copy into the Claude desktop app to connect this MCP server. What you might also notice here is we can add some authorization. So if we want to add some authorization, if I go back into my MCP server trigger here, at the moment, the authentication is set to none. And this is what I would recommend using if you are using the Claude integrations feature, because I haven't actually found a way to add the bearer token or a header auth when using the integrations. If you've managed to figure this out, please let me know how to do it in the comments below. I would be very grateful. However, if you're using the desktop app, what you can do is set up a bearer authentication, put in an extra password, and basically whatever you set here as the bearer authentication, you just also need to make sure you're updating it here. That's the MCP bearer token. You copy this one, add it to your Claude config file, and you're good to go. Now, I'm going to connect this one using the Claude integrations feature on the web app. So I'm just simply going to copy the MCP URL, and I can simply just click to copy. So that one should be copied over now. If I head over to Claude in the integration, so again, when you go to settings, integrations, then organizational integrations, I can add a custom one. So this one, N8N MCP, and I can simply paste in that URL. Now, very important, do not share your MCP URL with anyone, because it means they'll also be able to run any of the tools that you have set up and potentially connect to sensitive business data. So I'm just going to add this one. And now to test this out, we can see here it's enabled. I'll go back to my chats, open up the tools, and if I click on connect, that should all be connected. It's just reloaded. It actually says, look, there was an error connecting to N8N MCP server. Let's have a look over at the server, what's going on here. So my scenario is active. Maybe I just need to save this one. And I think that was it. I just needed to save it. Let me copy this one over again. And now that that is saved, let me go back over to Claude and see if I can connect this one again. And that looks good. Even though there was an error here, we now are seeing this N8N MCP coming up. And I have my 3 different tools: get all tasks, create a new task, and update a task. And so just like an example before, show me all of the tasks I have open. And then Claude is now making a call to N8N, seeing what tools it has, and it's realized, hey, I need to use the get all task tool. I'm going to say allow always. And as this happens, if we look over in N8N, these will appear here as executions. So whenever the MCP server runs, you can see here it ran and it used the get all tasks tool. This is an execution. So now this is probably the good time to talk about pricing when it comes to the N8N MCP. Basically, whenever your MCP server workflow is triggered, is invoked, it will run an execution. Now, the way N8N pricing works, you have to pay based on whenever a workflow is run. And that's why we see so many of the N8N workflows that have maybe many steps, because it's great if you have many steps in a workflow, because no matter how many steps run within the workflow, you're just going to be charged one execution. Now, as you can see, because typically these MCP workflow executions will be very small. You'll have many different tools here, but whenever this MCP trigger is basically calling one tool at a time, they will each happen in different executions. And that's something you should keep in mind when thinking about pricing. Next up, let's look at setting up an MCP server in Zapier. So to set up your MCP server in Zapier, here I am in my Zapier account. And what you may notice, this is a little bit hidden because there is no mention of MCP servers. It's not something that you create via Zaps. Even if at the top here that I search for MCP, it will not find anything. And that's because actually the MCP server of Zapier lives on a different page. So what we're going to do is head to mcp.zapier.com and of course, link in the description below. And here we can manage our MCP server. So I already had a test server set up here. I'm just going to delete that one so we can start from scratch. And here you can add a new MCP server. You'll notice this is something that is in beta, Zapier MCP, but you'll create connected with your same Zapier account. So I'm going to click here, new MCP server. We can select what type of client do we want to connect with. In my case, I'm going to select Claude. And now I can give this a name. And again, let me call this one, I'm going to call this Task Management MCP, create MCP server. And now we need to go ahead and add tools to our MCP. So again, and Zapier is really like prompting you what to do next. Let me click on add tool. And here we can connect from the more than 7,000 apps that Zapier have integrated with. This makes a ton of sense that Zapier offers an MCP because chances are whatever tool you need to connect, Zapier has an integration. I'm just going to select Airtable. And then we see all the options that we have for Airtable in terms of the different actions that we can allow our MCP server to take. So I can find many records. I can find a single record, create records, create a record, create records, create or update a record, delete, update, or even making custom API requests. And in one click, I can even simply add all the Airtable tools to my MCP, but I'm going to show you the setup of a specific one. So again, let's say I want to pull in all tasks from my task management system. I'm going to say find many records, and that is technically already set up, but we can go into the tool. And what we need to do is make sure our Airtable, the right Airtable account is connected. So here it is. And by default, whenever you just add a tool, all the fields will be set to have AI select a value for this field. And what I've seen from testing around with Zapier, it actually works best when leaving this for most fields. However, here, let's say in the case that I want to still be specific about what bases it should have access to. So let's say I want to set a specific value for the base, and I want to select my task management base. And the table I also want to select as tasks when it appears. Here we go, as tasks, and I can save. But for everything else, in this one, for finding many records, Zapier actually needs to do a search. So it's going to basically search a value based on what I prompt. If I say, show me open tasks, show me in progress tasks, show me overdue tasks, and it will be able to update those search fields. So I recommend deleting this as have AI generate a field. Now, one limitation that I see is whenever I go now and add another tool, so let's say I again want to add Airtable, I can't add many of the same action. I can only say find many records. I can't, for instance, say, hey, I want you to search the task table and then create another tool, which is searching my content management system. If you want to search many Airtable bases, you have to do it all in this one tool. So then I would actually leave both of these fields as have AI select a value for this field. And then it is a little bit more cumbersome on the chat side in Claude. You need to give some guidelines about which table it should actually search. And Zapier might even look up what are the different tables in your base. So in this case, I might just say for Airtable, I want to add all Airtable tools and use this connection, and it will be able to interact with those Airtable bases. Now, when it comes to connecting this, Zapier has made it super, super simple. I just click over here to connect, and I can now copy this URL, and it even links directly to the Claude integrations settings. Now, previously, the Zapier MCP did also work for running this locally in your Claude desktop app. It looks like they've actually removed that documentation on how to do this. They will not provide you here the JSON file. If anyone watching does have a copy of the right JSON to use, it would be great if you could drop that in the comments, and I could also make a follow-up video on it. But for now, I'm just going to use the integrations feature. So I'll copy my URL, open this one up. Then again, in Claude, going to organization integrations, add a custom integration. I'm just going to call this one Zapier and paste in that URL that was provided to me. And I can simply hit add. And we can see that this one is enabled. If I go and open up a new chat now, and let's go and check out the tools, you'll see here Zapier. First, I need to connect to it. So I'm going to click connect. And what this one is, it's actually set up using OAuth. So it's a great way to make sure that even if someone else happens to get their hands on that MCP server URL, I still wouldn't share it. But if they do, there is this extra layer of protection that you need to authenticate. So I'm logged in with my Zapier account, so I can simply click allow. And now I'm taken back here to the chat. We can see successfully connected to the Zapier server. And here we have all the different tools. So I can find many records, create, find a record. So let's see how it goes with what tasks do I have open. So now it's realized it should use the Airtable Find Many Records advanced tool. I'm going to say allow always. And we can see here the first time it actually failed because it's in Zapier, we aren't able to rename the tools. All it knows is that Airtable Find Many Records Advanced is the name of the tool. So here it says find all open tasks assigned to the user. The task should be in a table called tasks or something similar. And it's going to make several attempts of finding out that information. And now what Claude has actually done is it's actually searched for the different bases that I have and found that task management demo base. And it tried to make a call, and actually it got the information that it wasn't able to do that. So I'm seeing that it was probably using the wrong search criteria. It's now going a little bit AWOL and looking at the content machine, which it also shouldn't search. Now what it's asking me is, hey, I want to do a custom Airtable API request. So probably what it's going to do here is find out all the tables in my base. So here we go, get a list of tables in the content machine base. It's already gone in the wrong direction. So I would have needed to provide it more information here because we're letting the AI decide. We're not saying, hey, every time go to the task management base. We need to probably stop it here and give it some more instructions. So here Claude went really in the wrong direction because I let AI decide everything. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to go back to my Zapier MCP server, go back to the configuration, especially for this find many records step. I'm going to remap it that it's only looking at my task management demo base, and here only looking at my tasks table. However, I'm going to let AI decide what fields to search on. So I'm going to hit save, and let's see if that is giving us better results. I'm going to go back to Claude, refresh the page. What task do I have open? Again, it's asking to use the Find Many Records tool. I'm going to say allow always. And here it says find all open tasks in the Airtable base. That's the instruction that is given to the MCP server. It again made an initial call that failed. Now it's seeing if it can find all tasks that are not completed. And here it was successfully able to pull in those tasks. So it took a couple of attempts, a couple of calls to the MCP server, because you have a lot of fields that are letting the AI decide. So it tried to do one search, it didn't work. It tried to do another, and then it finally succeeded. And here we see my accurate to-do list. And I could now go and tell it to update some tasks, create some new tasks. But we do have a little bit of this limitation that we cannot create the same tool multiple times in Zapier. Now, when it comes to pricing, this is actually separate. In the bottom left here, you'll see usage. And if I hover over this, this is the monthly limit of MCP actions your account can use. This is for Zapier MCP only and does not affect your other Zapier plan. This is something is in beta, so I feel like Zapier have just opened this up for everyone to play around with and test, and given everyone these 300 credits. If we have a look at the history, here we can see all the calls that were made to my MCP server. You see some caused errors, but then some were successful. So it's really useful for debugging. Let me see if I refresh this page and if that usage number has increased. So now we see that there were four credits used. And so it looks like it's only consuming credits for calls that were actually successful, not for errors, which is quite generous from Zapier. Now, to set up your Make MCP server, I'm going to be following this documentation here, and I will leave a link in the description below. But there's basically 3 things we need to do to be able to connect, for instance, Claude to the Make MCP server. There's basically 3 prerequisites. First of all, a Make MCP token, and I'll show you exactly where we can get this. Then we need to have at least one available Make scenario with on-demand scheduling. So this is basically going to be the tools that your MCP server has access to. So in Make, you basically won't be able to have tools that are direct API calls. Every tool you want your MCP server to have, you need to set up as an on-demand scheduled scenario. And this is actually very, very simple to set up. And finally, of course, an MCP compatible client. And in our case, we're going to be using the Claude web app. But here in this documentation, you'll also see, for instance, if I click down here, you'll find the exact JSON that you need if you do want to set this up using the Claude desktop app. But let's get started with point number 1 about getting our MCP token. So over in our Make account, you won't find any mention of MCP here in the side menu. It's also not available inside our scenarios. The way we can get our MCP server URL is in the bottom left here. We need to click on Profile and then switch to the tab API/MCP Access. So here you'll see the different MCP servers or tokens, as Make call it, that you set up. I had one that I was running testing with already. I was actually just delete that one. And so I can start again. So I'll add a token. Here it'll be an MCP token. And I can give this one a name. So I'll just call this Demo Make MCP. And now we get here our MCP server URL that I can simply copy and add over to Claude. But before we do that, one important thing to point out here is this MCP URL is connected to your user, and it basically will give access to any on-demand scenario that you have in any of your teams or organizations that you have access to. So me, for instance, I'm members of several different organizations because sometimes I get added to the organization of companies that we train. And what I would definitely not want is all of a sudden any of their scenarios running because Claude decides to run it. So the way that we can limit which scenarios this MCP token has access to, I'm going to head back over to the documentation and click here on Tools Access Control. And there's 3 different ways that we can basically update this URL to limit what scenarios or what tools the MCP server has access to. So first of all, on organization level, I can basically add the organization ID that I want to connect. On a team level, so if you're on a Make team plan, you can create different teams and set up a specific team, for instance, as an MCP server team, and any tool that gets added to that team, you simply just add the team ID. Or on the most granular level, you can do this on a scenario by scenario basis. And it even has the possibility of adding multiple scenarios. But I would say the most scalable, you probably wouldn't want to give access to a whole organization. And on the flip side, scenario level means every time you create a new scenario tool, you need to go back into Claude and edit the URL. So I'm going to stick with the team method. So first of all, I'm going to head over to Claude and add the integration here. So I'm going to add my custom integration, call this one Make MCP Demo. And this at the moment is that base URL that gives access to everything. What I actually have set up in Make, if I go back to, first of all, the documentation, and let me just copy the way that the team ID needs to be added on. So I'll go here and do $ team ID equals, and I need to here paste an ID. Back over in Make, I've actually created a specific team called the MCP, which has the MCP tools that I have set up. So I'm testing with a few, and here in Make, as it said, is any your tool connected to the MCP are basically scenarios that need to have on-demand scheduling. So this little symbol here is on demand. At the moment, I have 3 tools set up, allowing me to interact with a Google Sheet, which contains an overview of the different emails we're sending. So Claude can help me with planning out our email marketing strategy. So I'll click into one of these tools, but actually before I do that, I'll show you how to grab the team ID. So here I'm in my team. If I take a look at the URL, this is the ID of my specific team. So I'm going to copy this one over back in Claude. Now add this ID at the end here and hit add. And that Make MCP is now connected and enabled. And if we have a look at the chat, open up the settings, we see Make MCP Demo. And there we have the different tools: get emails, add a new email, or update an email in our Google Sheet. So the way these tools are set up in Make, there's a few things that we need to consider. Let me first start with the get emails tool. So here, because I'm interacting with a Google Sheet, I simply added a Google Sheet step. And so the tools that you can connect to Make MCPs are any of these 1,000 tools that Make already have integrations with. And within each tool, there's many different actions that you can use. So for instance, in the case of Google Sheets, we can add a row, update a row, search rows, clear a row, delete a row, update a specific cell. So many things that we can do to interact with a Google Sheet. In this case, my tool is simply searching a Google Sheet to get all the rows back. And basically the important part is when you want to send some information back to Claude that it will retrieve from when it communicates with the MCP server, you need to return something known as a scenario output. And the way we configure these is down here, we have scenario inputs and outputs. And in the case of just pulling in all data from a Google Sheet, I don't have any inputs here, but I do have one output, which is a list of emails, because I'm connected here to my email overview Google Sheet. And I just want to pull in all rows from that Google Sheet and return it as an output. So here I'm just aggregating all of those rows into one array and sending it back to my tool. Now this looks slightly different if we want to have some MCP tools that are actually updating or creating some information. So for instance, if I want to add a new email logged in that Google Sheet, I now have here in the scenario inputs, every column, and I can even just open up that Google Sheet and show you. So here's my Google Sheet with the different emails that we're currently sending as a part of our email marketing strategy. This is what we're using to plan. We see we have a name of the email, a subject line, a body, and a short description, as well as a status. So whenever Claude now, or like we want to give AI access to create a new email here or log a new email in this sheet, the way we set this up in Make is we set up scenario inputs. And you can think of this like a form that the AI needs to fill in whenever it wants to run this tool. So in order to create a new email in our email overview sheet, you need an email name, a subject line, and a body, and optionally a description. And then we return the output, simply the row that was just created in the Google Sheet. So if we then want to update anything, Claude knows exactly what row to update. Let me just give that a quick test over here. So what current emails are we sending? And you can see here it's picked up the Make MCP, get emails from email overview. I'm going to allow always. And now it's listing the currently live emails and one planned idea email that we have. So this is perfect. I could now create some new emails, get it to update, get it to create. It has access to those tools. And really in Make, it is very, very flexible. It is a little bit of work in setting up these different tools, but you're not limited. You could have many tools looking at many different Google Sheets, Airtable bases, your CRM. You can list them all in a single team or even in a single organization. The key parts, and maybe I can point that out as well here, is the fact that this scenario needs to be set to on-demand scheduling. So sometimes if you create a new scenario, you'll just see a little like watch symbol appearing here. If you click on this, you want to make sure that it's not at any of these schedules, but rather set to on-demand and has at least inputs as well as outputs. So one of them would probably be required to have a meaningful MCP tool in Make. When it comes to pricing, Make basically works on what are known as operations. So whenever a single module here runs, that is one operation. You don't pay anything extra for the MCP functionality, but if an AI system like Claude calls one of these tools via the MCP, you will get charged every operation. For instance, here it's pulling some data in from a Google Sheet, aggregating it to an array, sending it back to the AI. That would be 3 operations that would be credited away from your Make account. Next up, setting up an MCP server in Pipedream. Now, traditionally, Pipedream has been more of the low code rather than no code side of things, but they are pushing more and more into making things easier also for non-technical people. So to access the Pipedream MCP, it's actually again on a subdomain. So I'm going to go mcp.pipedream.com. And here you will find the list of the thousands of APIs. So here 2.5K APIs plus 10,000 tools to your assistant for free. They are not charging anything for their MCP server. So you can basically go and find whichever tools you are connected to. Now, what I've noticed from testing around with Pipedream, it is far better at, for instance, if you have a tool like Stripe, where you just want to get access to every single action. If I click here on Stripe, you will see it has 45 available tools that I can cancel a payment, I can create customers, I can pull in a lot of data. This is great if you're doing any sort of financial analysis on the purchases that have been made through your Stripe account. And basically, you just want to get access to the whole Stripe account. Those sort of tools are very good in Pipedream. What is a bit trickier, tools like Airtable or Google Sheets, where you want to potentially connect to many different sheets or many different Airtable bases. Let's say you have task management in one Airtable base, you have a content plan in another, maybe you have some LinkedIn posts in another one. Let's go have a look. If I set up my Airtable base, here it's just some available tools. I cannot configure these whatsoever. I can't say, hey, I only want you to go and read from this specific base. The only way we could configure that is using our API key, and which Airtable bases our API key has access to when we authenticate. So the way this works is you'll see here that I'm already connected because I set this up before. If you weren't, you simply just first need to always connect with the account that you're using. So I'm going to disconnect from Airtable so I can show you how it works from scratch. So here I'm going to search for Airtable from the list of MCP tools. And I'm going to connect my account and let's continue. Again, this uses OAuth authentication, so it's super, super simple. And here, I just need to basically pick which Airtable bases this should have access to. So I could say everything, all current bases or future bases that I have access to, or I can simply select the one base. So that is a way to sort of narrow the scope. So I've just selected my task management demo base and I can select grant access. And now I can continue. So this is my Airtable MCP server. Here we have the MCP server URL. And then basically, depending on which tool that you are using, Pipedream will give you different actions on how to install it. So when it comes to connecting Claude, if you're using the Claude integrations, you simply just need to copy this MCP server URL, add that as an integration. And if you're using the desktop app, you can copy the JSON file down here. Now, again, how it works is whenever you're signed into Pipedream, you can only connect to the one tool via one MCP server at a time. So if, for instance, here I've got my Airtable MCP server set up, it's connected to my account where I said it only has access to one base. What I can't do is if I go back to the list here and try and add another Airtable connection so I can connect it to a different base, it will, when I click on Airtable, it goes back to this section that's already connected. So the way you need to do it is if you manage your account, I can disconnect again and then rather add more bases that my Airtable MCP would have access to. But then you need to be very clear in your instructions with the AI model, which bases it should be using. Let me just go ahead and grab that MCP URL. Again, do not share this with anyone, but I'll go over now to Claude, so Claude.ai. Click on my profile at the bottom, then settings, then over to integrations and organization integrations, add a custom integration. Here I'll call this Pipedream Airtable, because you'll basically create one MCP server for every tool that you're connecting. If I now connect Stripe, that will be a separate MCP server URL. If I connect Google Sheets, if I connect Notion, if I connect HubSpot, all of those will have their own MCP server URLs, but it is very quick to set up. And now my Pipedream Airtable is connected. Let's start a new chat and see how that looks like. We can see here there is 18 tools that I have access to. So a bunch of different tools. And this is the only area where I can sort of disable or enable some. I don't have any options in Pipedream to make any configurations here. So they've made it super, super simple, but then it is a little bit more limited in terms of configuration. But for someone new getting started to MCP, also the fact that it is free, so we don't need to worry about how many times, how many API calls are being made to our MCP server. this is super, super powerful and a great way to get started. Now, next up, let's take a look at Relevance.ai and how their MCP server works. If you have not heard about Relevance, you definitely need to check it out. They are an AI agent building platform, newly created, and their sole focus is on allowing you to set up agents and even multi-agent systems. So over in my Relevance account, so here we have a list of agents that we have set up. Every agent, I'm going to show you this template from Relevance actually, which is their account analyst agent, that you just give this agent a company that you want your sales team to potentially reach out to. And it's going to do all the research about that company that typically would take a human up to half an hour of collecting all this information. So our agents are connected to different tools. So for instance, this agent has the ability to perform Google searches, extract content from a website, interpret that website visually. It can then find a company's LinkedIn profile, see if they have any job postings for their specific company, find out how many employees they have, what technology the company is using. All of these tools can be configured all the way to actually updating our CRM. And each of those, so here I'm on the agent setting, it has access to different tools, and each of these tools we can set up individually. So a tool could be one simple step or many. So actually the tool that I'm going to be demoing for this MCP setup is I have a simple tool that allows me to extract LinkedIn posts from a given profile. So this tool has one input, which is I just need to give it a LinkedIn profile URL. And then basically Relevance here, they have a bunch of actions that some of the other no-code builders might not have. For instance, when it comes to LinkedIn, I can get a LinkedIn profile of both the person or their company and the post. I can take specific actions on LinkedIn. So for instance, they have LinkedIn actions around getting all the chats that you've received, sending messages, sending comments, sending invitations. So a lot of powerful actions in many different tools. But this one simply is going to take whatever LinkedIn profile we're currently look at and pull in all of their users' posts. So for instance, if I'm working on my next LinkedIn post, it's probably useful that Claude has context about what I've posted previously. So any tools that we set up here in Relevance, so here we have the agents and here we have the tools. Basically, any of these tools here can be used as tools for an MCP server. And to do that, we just need to make sure we're in the tools section. And then at the top right, click on export tools. And here we see MCP server. So I'm going to click on that one. And here we can create our MCP server. And to do that, we need to select which of the tools do we want to give, basically allow our MCP server to run and have access to. Now, this part is a little bit cumbersome. As you can see, we've been playing around with Relevance quite a lot, and we have almost 26 pages of tools. It would be great if there was like a search functionality here. But here I see, luckily in the first page, that extract LinkedIn posts tool. And I'm going to select this one, but I could select multiple. So for instance, if I wanted to extract and summarize website content or update or create a record in the CRM, I could simply just select those tools that I have previously configured. And then I'm going to select generate MCP server configuration. And here we basically get the JSON that we need to add to our Claude desktop app. Right now, Relevance are only supporting this like local configuration where they just give you a JSON. They're not able to give you an MCP URL that you could add to Claude integrations. But I have been in touch with the Relevance team, and they said this is something they plan on adding very, very soon. So maybe even at the time that you're watching this video, they've made this update. So I'm just going to copy this one over and add it to my Claude desktop app. So to do that, I'm simply going to go to the Claude settings, open up that config file. So click on developer, edit the config file, open this one with my code editor. And then here I'm simply going to paste in that JSON that Relevance give us. So I'm going to copy this one and let's paste this in here. Then save this one and let's restart the Claude desktop app so it knows that it now has access to these tools. So I'm going to quit. Then let's open up Claude again. And let's have a look. So here we see the Relevance MCP server, super fast, and it has access to one tool. So let me try something like, hey, I'd like to work together on generating some new LinkedIn posts. Can you first analyze the previous posts that I have posted to understand how I like to style and structure my LinkedIn posts and the type of content that I like to speak about? I'll send that prompt off to Claude. Now, Claude should realize that it needs to call the MCP tool, and it actually needs, so I'll be happy to help and generate any new LinkedIn posts, but could you please provide me with your LinkedIn profile URL? Because it realizes that is the input that the tool needs. So I'm just going to go and copy over my LinkedIn profile, and I can share that one to Claude. And so now it's calling its relevance tool. I'm going to say allow always. And here we can take a look at the different posts that are brought in, and we see all the text. Right now it's in this sort of JSON format that's a bit hard to understand. I might actually make this one a little bit bigger, but this is something that an AI can perfectly understand. Even if I open this and close it again, we can see all the way we have all those posts, and now it's able to concisely think exactly, see the type of topics that I'm doing, and it would have a great start. Now, what we could do is improve this by going into Relevance, adding some more tools, adding it the ability to maybe schedule some posts, or really diving deep. What I would recommend is going into the tools here, creating new tools in Relevance, and just seeing all of the actions that they have. Because as I mentioned, you might have some actions here that will not be available in other tools that you're using. And it is, you can get really creative and build quite custom tools in Relevance. Now, when it comes to pricing, the way this works is we can check here. So this is the tool that I added. We can check on the logs. Every time a tool runs, it's going to consume a certain amount of credits. And depending on what Relevance plan you have, so I can take a look over here. So you have different credits, and these will basically be consumed. So it's very easy for you to calculate. But typically, like the more AI steps you add into the tool, or the more actions it needs to do, it's going to consume some credits. And that's the way basically the pricing works. You're not paying extra for MCP. It's typically like if an agent was going to run that tool, or now if your MCP server is running the tool, it's going to consume those same amount of credits. So I hope that gave you a good understanding at the different options that are out there right now when it comes to no-code MCP servers. What I would leave you with, I sort of see two different buckets here. So if you just want to have an MCP server that connects to different APIs and you don't need to do anything custom, probably the solutions like Zapier and Pipedream are where you should start, because it's very simple to connect to the tools, and then you basically immediately get access to all the options that you have via API. Now, if you do need to make some more custom tools, where maybe you want to build your own workflows and have like multiple steps within one MCP tool, that's where I'd be looking at either Relevance, Make, or N8N, which allows you, it does take a little bit extra to set up, but then you have a lot more customizability and could potentially create some much more creative tools than simply calling different APIs. Now, if you got value from this video, it would mean a lot if you could drop a like on the video and also subscribe to the 9X channel. And by the way, YouTube thinks you should watch this video next.